I just wanted to ask you again specifically about Georgia and events that transpired over the last, 4 days. And the Kremlin, Russia is trying to frame it as another Maidan, saying that it's going down a dark path. So how do you think the EU and the EU's allies, Canada and the US, should respond?
So I'll let the EU members respond themselves, but what I can tell you though is Canada is in solidarity with the Georgian people, and we are very concerned about what Russia is trying to do in Georgia, and in that sense we will follow suit. We will sanction key individuals and also businesses, entities that are involved in either human rights violations or corruption based on our own sanctions regime. And so you will have more from me in the coming days regarding this issue.
As for us, we have had extensive consultations among the Baltic foreign ministers on both the assessment of the situation and the measures that we can take. And also within the EU, you saw a strong statement published yesterday by the High Representative, endorsed by the EU states. So quite clearly, the future of Georgia that Georgian people stand for in accordance with the overall assessment is European future. And we see that also from this expression of popular will that should be guaranteed by the fundamental right of freedom of assembly and expression. And we deeply regret the Georgian government decision to announce that they will not pursue that path until 28, despite the EU constantly saying that the door is open and it's up to the Georgian government to implement the reforms and follow that path that people support. Also, in the current situation, obviously, suppression of those protests, hundreds of arrests, the violence, is something that we cannot keep silent. So we will take measures to make sure that perpetrators are affected.
Adding a bit as well that I think it's pretty sure that we cannot call these elections, they were in Georgia honest and everything what we used to have in democracies, and also everything what we see from the streets now, the using of power against demonstrations and peaceful people who has a right to actually speak out. This is not a part what can we see as well as a member state of European Union, and it's a pity that the leading political party has decided not to follow the Georgian people's will, but deciding to turn away from the European Union way. And it has been written in as well to the Georgian constitution. So this is a much more deeper question. It's not only about what EU is doing, but actually what is Georgia is doing, what the Georgian people are doing. So we are in a very clear position to support Georgian people's right to speak out, to be a part of democracies. And also, as Baiba mentioned, we have decided as a three Baltic countries to run the sanctions against the persons who are responsible for the violence against the people not following humanitarian laws. And I do hope that, and today will be the listed names as well public. Already you can see as well who we put under the sanctions. But also I do hope, and we will raise these kind of questions as well on the European Union level, because we have made decisions from European Union side already years ago to support the Georgian way as agreed towards European Union, but this political party has decided to turn totally the other direction. So I'm deeply concerned that the Georgian people's will is not represented.
Latvijas žurnālistiem es gribētu arī
To Latvian journalists, I would like to also make an announcement in Latvian. I would like to specifically reiterate in Latvian that since the end of last week, we'd been discussing on a ministerial level, on a ministry level, and on diplomatic level, we'd been very actively discussing what our response should be or reaction should be, because, of course, there's domestic processes in Georgia, people's will and vote, but then there is also Georgia's path that we have supported and still continue to support. And, of course, Georgian people have the right to appeal against decisions that have been made by the ruling party, one of the ruling parties in Georgia, which has decided, in fact, to discontinue the negotiations, accession negotiations with the EU, and they are actively using disinformation, misinformation, various fake news, and so on and so forth to dissuade its people, which has resulted, of course, in mass protests, and it's the fundamental right of the Georgian population to protest, like in Latvia, and government suppressing such protests are unacceptable, and there have been precedents also in Belarus where those protests were suppressed and people were sanctions. There were personal sanctions about violence. Sometimes we publish those names, we disclose those names, sometimes we don't. It's our sovereign decision, and in this case, whenever we have the list, we will decide when and how to disclose those lists. But there is at least a political consensus that there will be a list of sanctioned individuals. Would the Lithuanian representative like to also?
Thank you very much. Very briefly, so speaking about list, it was already mentioned. So our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Gabrielius Landsbergis, already a few minutes ago, posted on, please check his Twitter account, a list of the representatives of Georgian authorities who were denied entry to the territory of Lithuania because of abuse of human rights in Georgia. And last but not least, we fully support European aspirations of Georgian people.